What's up, guys? It's Flash, back with some more charts and another video. Today's Monday, May 13th, around 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Gonna go through this list, which I have labeled as puzzle pieces. In other words, just kind of a macro overview of some indices, gold, silver, ratios that I like to follow to see where capital is rotating to and from. And I'll kind of give you my opinion as we go along here. But here, what I have pulled up to kind of kick things off is the S&P 500. And what I've done is grab this fractal, the orange, which is from the late 1960s into the 1970s, and just kind of overlaid it. Here it kind of matches up. We pop up, we kind of stop and stall out right here. We continue our march upwards right here, where this kind of starts to rhyme a little bit more, where there's a dip, now a recovery, and I'm expecting the S&P 500 to more or less just kind of go sideways for the remainder of the decade and maybe beyond. Just kind of a hypothesis or a thesis, if you will, due to inflation, due to the rotation of capital going from general equities, like in the S&P 500, and more so rotating into gold and silver stocks and uranium and oil and commodity driven assets. And what I'm using to kind of look at that is the gold to S&P 500 ratio, which is kind of a big turning of the ship here. And so as it did, if we revisit the late 1960s and 1970s, big turning of the ship. It wasn't as a well-defined bull, if you will, but gold really started to outperform the S&P 500 in this time period, and that signified a rotation of capital out of general equities into inflation-heavy driven assets. And so that's more or less what I'm expecting to happen again. And so if that were to happen, I would think the S&P 500 will kind of flatline. It'll go up and down until it would finally break out again in the future. And so just moving on to the NASDAQ again, it's been kind of following these trend lines more or less over the last decade or two, hitting our head at the top here. We'll see if this kind of again corrects and kind of bounces sideways. Another ratio I like to look at is the S&P 500 measured in PPI, Producer Price Index. Again, it kind of helps us keep track of how inflation really is affecting everything. And I think if this breaks down, we'll know that inflation really is for real. So it looks like we already did break down and we're kind of just doing a retest. So we'll see. But again, going to continue following it for you guys. If we look at another ratio that drives a lot of attention and capital rotation is the gold to silver ratio. If this breaks down, that means good things for gold and silver and its accompanying assets. So looks like it's breaking down, but it's not going to happen overnight, right? Now, if you just want to look at, NVIDIA, always been a big topic of conversation, still kind of in this wedge formation. This only has a couple touches on it, this trend line, so we'll see if it's valid or not. But looks like NVIDIA is really just holding things up, the AI trade, right? We can look at Bitcoin, BLX. And this is a dome, again, that I've seen online a lot. We'll see if this kind of holds true or not. But kind of interesting to think about, is Bitcoin really the safe haven asset, this future of exchange, medium of exchange, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not so sure kind of looking at this chart. So we're going to see if it holds up or not. But kind of interesting, right? Look at Google and Apple and Tesla, some of the Magnificent Seven stocks that I like to follow along. Google's doing super well. It's breaking out of this, what I thought could be a double top, right? Could also be making a higher high, and we'll see what happens. But definitely interesting because Apple, has shown strength recently. But I still kind of have this rounded top formation, slowing momentum formation, right? And now we'll look at Tesla, which again has been doing well recently. If we want to drop back onto the weekly, it's shown a little bit of strength here, kind of just a little blip on the radar when you look at it, the big picture. But again, I expect Tesla to kind of continue chopping sideways here. Gold, again, kind of steady as she goes. I think it's entered this new paradigm of uptrend for gold. And also silver, massive breakout following the bull. So, I mean, this is kind of marking what I'm expecting, this rotation because of inflation. And GDX breaking out, following suit with gold and silver. SilJ doing more or less the same thing. And you can see it in a lot of the gold and silver miners. They've been doing well the past couple of weeks. So I expect that to continue. We can look at oil. I'll go onto the weekly on oil. And we may have to clean this up a little bit. But oil's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I think it's still holding. So this chart always gives me a fit because of that huge drop in 2020. But again, looks like oil's big consolidation, breakout, back test, rounded back test, big picture stuff. I think we're going to continue higher. We look at XOP. Breakout, back test, similar to what oil's actually doing on its chart, and OIH even. Just kind of chugging along, grinding along. Nothing much has changed. And to continue on with the energy, URA, something I follow on a daily basis. Again, just doing its thing, grinding to the upside. And now we can look at some ratios that I like to follow. The gold, or the Dow to gold ratio. We can zoom way out here. Again, if we look at the 1960s, 1970s, this had a rounded top formation before gold really took off. And similar to today, kind of a rounded top formation before I think gold is really set to take off. The Russell to gold doesn't have data back in the 1970s, but you can see here, very similar. Gold's holding strong against the Russell, and I think it's going to come down here to test this bottom of this trend line and maybe beyond. You can look at the S&P versus XOP. So general equities measured in energy stocks, XOPs specifically. Looks like a down leg, bear flag, and maybe a continued down leg. We'll have to see, but that's looking what it's going to happen. And then gold to Bitcoin is another ratio I think is super interesting. Bitcoin looks like it's losing momentum against gold, and I think once gold really gets going here, once I think the NASDAQ and S&P maybe roll over, for example, I think Bitcoin will follow suit, and you'll see this ratio kind of work its way to the upside. Again, kind of a thesis, hypothesis, a lot of touch points on this arc. We'll see if it holds up. And then last but not least, I have URA, uranium ETF measured in gold. If gold's going to be doing well, we want to be able to outperform gold, and I think that's really a good opportunity to do that is in the uranium miners, as well as gold, silver, oil stocks. But that's all I have, guys. Again, not much has changed. This is going to take a long time to play out, but things I think seem to be tracking. What I'm really paying attention to is gold versus SPX. That's going to be the key, I think, here in determining this capital rotation. But I'll keep following along for you guys, keep giving my financial opinion. If you're interested, drop me a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video.